Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Linemiller, your host. We've heard a lot about regenerative agriculture, regenerative farming, and the definitions change. And we actually have a woman with us today who is an expert in this area and has spent quite a lot of her time in her career working in agriculture. I'm so excited to bring Executive Director of the Regenerative Organic Alliance. Welcome to the show, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Pam. It's been really fun getting to know you a little bit, and I'm excited to be here on your show and share some of my knowledge about regenerative.
Yeah, cannot wait to hear about some of that. But you have had a long history in the industry, in the agricultural industry. What have you done up till now?
Gosh, I've done I've played a lot of different roles, but I really got inspired in the possibilities of agriculture to be a solution to so many of our problems back right out of college. And I learned about farming and local food systems in the Ozarks and kind of reoriented me and set my path from being a very committed environmentalist, looking at issues like consumerism and waste and recycling. Pretty depressing, really. And I found agriculture as this really amazing solution for our health, for the planet, for communities, for all kinds of things. And so since the early 90s, I have been on this track, and I spent some time in graduate school learning all about agroecology and focused on coffee production, working in Central America, and led me to California, and eventually to working at California certified CCOF, California Certified Organic Farmers, where I spent much of my career, about 17 years there, traveling around, talking to organic farmers, helping them, just ensuring they were being compliant with the organic rules, and also just being their representative and helping them in many different ways. So it was a great time of learning for me and spending time around the kitchen table in the back of a pickup truck bed, taking notes, working with farmers, understanding what their challenges were. And yeah, that was kind of what led me here to this role that I am in now as the executive director at the ROA.
Yeah, congratulations. How did the Regenerative Organic Alliance come together?
We can call it the ROA for short.
ROA, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I do tend to speak in acronyms, so sometimes you can correct me, but we'll get that one straight. Yeah. So the Alliance, or the ROA, came together in 2017, and it was founded by Dr. Bronner's, Patagonia, and the Rodeo Institute. And these three organizations were really well known and regarded as these iconic brands and organizations who had been supporting organic, part of their DNA of their mission and what they were all doing. And they all wanted to continue to support organic, but they also saw some of the flaws in organic. And they really wanted to create a vision for the future of agriculture that included organic, but built on that, and looked at these through the lens of these three pillars. And that is, as the ROA defined it, the three pillars are soil health, animal welfare, and then worker and farmer well-being, or social fairness. So they came together in 2017, and they started saying, well, God, let's create a new standard. Let's do this. Let's make this real. And they created a standard, and they created quite a lot of controversy. People were like, what's wrong with organic? Isn't it good enough? And who are you to do this? And they took in a lot of public feedback, a lot of commentary, and they hired NSF International to come in as the program manager because they had such tremendous amount of feedback, and they really wanted to capture it. And they did a great job with NSF overseeing all these different working groups who contributed to the formation of the first regenerative organic certified framework. And that's about when I came in. They hired me to oversee a pilot program to test out this framework around the world, and then continue from there. And so we can get into more detail.
What about that certification?
Well, yeah, the certification, we can also, Regenerative Organic Certified is the name of our certification, and we can call that the ROC. And
Okay.
and so the rock framework, the program is operating around the world. We did our pilot program in 8 different countries with 20 different farms or farming groups. We work with grower groups when you're working in the global south, which means you may have, it's one farm, but it is composed of like 1,000 smallholders. Okay, so think bananas, coffee, chocolate, cotton, things that we all probably love. That these are grown by smallholders in the global south, and they usually have maybe 2 or 3 acres each. And so they consolidate all that together, and they work in co-ops or with grower groups. And so we had, in theory, we had thousands of farmers in our pilot program, but it was through the lens of these 20 farms.
Right.
Some of those were estates, some were small family farms, some were grower groups, and we ranged from India to Sri Lanka, Argentina, across the entire US and up into Canada.
That's quite the group. So that was really a great place to start to actually vet out what you were doing.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what we did. We tested it out. We took in so much feedback. Oh my gosh. And NSF stayed with us, and then they oversaw the next phase after the pilot was to have 3 different groups one for each pillar, taking in all the feedback that came from all those farmers. And that was part of the deal of participating, is they needed to give us a lot of feedback, which they did. And it helped us a lot. It really informed the kind of the development of the standard. We made it a bit more realistic. I'd say the first rock framework was very aspirational, super North Star. We love that, but we have to be able to get there, right? You don't want to just be always trying to get there and never arriving. So we needed to change a few things, which we did. It's still quite high bar, quite aspirational, but the rock framework has 3 levels: bronze, silver, and gold. And the whole idea is we build in the concept of continuous improvement.
Right. The whole progression, that's really smart. So you're not just totally discouraging somebody with the gold standard right off. They can enter at a different level, which is still stringent, but achievable, and then move on up to silver and gold. Well, across all these countries in the world, I mean, aren't there different standards in different countries? Did you have with these different 3 pillars?
Yes,
I mean, how did that work?
Well, we recognize 14 different standards.
Okay.
So, and we begin with the baseline of organic or equivalent to USDA organic. So EU organic has an equivalency agreement with the US.
Okay.
So that the standards are basically equalized, and we accept organic goods from Europe. We accept organic goods from other countries because they have an equivalency agreement. So we start with that as the baseline, but we also recognize many other standards mostly in social fairness. There's like 7 or 8 different standards that are out there, and that we're talking about the Fair Trade USA, Fair Trade International, Fair for Life, Small Producer Symbol. There's a variety of different programs in different regions of the world that are meant to protect the most vulnerable who are working out there on the farms, and that these are the social fairness certifications. So we recognize those, and we do a gap analysis for comparing the ROC framework to those other standards, and then we basically will benchmark it, show the gap, and then the auditors who go out there are going to audit just to the gap. Obviously, they're not going to go and do the whole ROC framework if this operation already has Fair for Life certification. Okay. We also work only with NOP accredited certification bodies. So we do third-party certifications, which is a really important distinction. Using third parties, it means you're relying on competent, trained, qualified auditors and staff to do the work. And it's a third party, so that eliminates the conflict of interest of me going out and saying, oh gosh, we really need some sausage. I'm going to let these pork producers all slip by, right? Like none of that can happen because we separate ourselves with third-party accredited certifiers. And they also are already doing the organic audit. And so the whole idea is that we bundle it. And so the organic auditor is out there once a year anyway. at the time they add on the rock audit, and then that same auditor already understands the operation. They're already out there, they've studied, they've learned who this farm is, what they produce, what their challenges are. They do the organic audit, and then they proceed to do the regenerative organic certified audit.
Yeah, that's so efficient, Elizabeth, to be able to put those two together. And like you said, credible for you as an organization because you have the third party doing it and there's not any conflict of interest or, if there was a funding situation or, there can't be any monkey business going on because you're offloading that to a different organization.
That's right. Yeah. And so they make the certification decision. They tell us, and we have a whole really intricate system, database where we capture all the workings of every client. If you look at our website at regenorganic.org, we have a find a farmer or find a product. And that's all driven by the database where we do all of our work, where all of those 14 certifiers I mentioned, they have a portal. We assign a work order to the auditor. They go get the work order. They find the checklist, and the checklist is adapted to each client in each region based on the certifications that they already hold. So the system is all really intact. And those same certifiers, most of them work with the same database provider. So they're all really familiar with this. It's called, in our case, it's MyRock.
Nice.
If it was CCOF or PCO, it would say my PCO, my CCOF, and it's driven by a Austrian-based company that has done this kind of work in Europe for many, many years.
Okay, so there's some common technological similarities that makes it easy to do the business. But let's fast forward. You started out initially doing this study with 20 farms with possibly thousands of farmers. And fast forward to now, what kind of process do you have? How many farms or farmers do you have involved, et cetera?
Yeah, well, there was staff of 1, and now we've grown our staff to 14, 15, wow. And seems like we keep operating in the 14 and 15 range, which isn't quite sufficient, I will say. But doing that, we have made a lot of tracks. We are now at 15 plus million acres in our program, and we're operating in 97 countries.
Okay.
And with all that acreage, we have about 200 brands like Patagonia, Eileen Fisher, Outer Known, Prana, Maggie's. Those are all some of the clothing brands we work with, Terra Threads and some others. So they are able to buy cotton from those producers, and then the brands bring it to the market in a product. With food, we really have a lot of growth in the food market. And I think that's kind of the first thing where people realize like what they put in their body has an effect on their health. Okay. And so it's not just like, also with clothing, you put that on your body, you're absorbing it. Your skin is your largest organ. And so wearing organic clothing is really important to some people. New moms, they often are looking for organic baby clothes because they learn that a lot of other clothes are sprayed with chemicals.
Irritable.
And chemicals are absorbed by their baby's skin. Yeah. Same with food though, is, what you put in your body is going to affect your health. And so we have a lot of growth in the consumer packaged good market, CPG. We also have a lot of growth in specialty crops like wine grapes from California to Italy to France, Austria, and then other beverages like tea and coffee and cacao. Those are all really big growth areas. And then, personal body care. We have a couple brands doing that. Not many. Dr. Bronner's, pretty beloved for their soap and things like that. And then some others are kind of coming into the market, but it's a little difficult. It's challenging in those kind of body care and cosmetic products.
Yeah, well, we consumers are waking up to the fact that what we eat and obviously what we wear, the things that get absorbed by our body and the food industry, there's so much more attention paid to what we're eating than there ever used to be. And so that's very exciting. And people are looking for certifications like what your organization facilitates to be able to make some better choices for themselves. But I will say I've heard the regenerative word, discussed several times, and it seems like there's not really a great definition for that that's universal. But I know you're in California, and maybe they're a little more cutting edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not from California, so I can
Or
say
you're
that.
in,
I'm
yeah,
from Georgia, but I'm in California. And I do agree. I mean, I think California does lead the nation and has in so many ways. And we're like the world's 5th largest economy. So what we do here really matters. And California is setting out to define regenerative. And that's through the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And the reason that they decided to start defining it was last year. I got wind of it and I reached out to this committee to be like, hey, what are you doing? There's a lot going on in this market. You may not realize, but like there's certifications, there's a really busy marketplace with regenerative claims being put on packs. So be careful what you do. Please don't do it, actually. And they actually invited me to be on the working group. And so I've been on the working group for the state to help define it. And we had our last working session just a couple weeks ago. And soon there will be the last public listening session, but they've done 5 public listening sessions. They said they had more people attending these than they had attending the listening sessions when the state decided to legalize cannabis.
Oh my goodness.
So it's been a hot topic, as you can
Yes.
imagine. And California was the first to legalize cannabis. And so, you know, there's a lot of people interested in this. And, you know, I think the state has done an excellent job of being really inclusive and bringing all of us in. There's 13 people in the working group. And we, you know, there was a scientific advisory panel that came up with the first definition and some research papers, scientific papers, and then they made the first recommendation, and that was basically what we started from. And then we all were able to contribute to the definition. And if you'd like, I could read you the first kind of introduction to it.
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it's we deliberated over most every word. Regenerative agriculture, as defined for use by the state of California policies and programs, is an integrated approach to farming and ranching rooted in the principles of soil health, leading to improved target outcomes. The approach recognizes and respects the traditions and innovations from the original indigenous stewards of the land. And I think that part was really key. What we heard in the first listening sessions were people saying, what about the indigenous people? They were the original practitioners of regenerative concepts. And so let's not like throw, you know, let's make sure to honor that contribution that indigenous thinking has made to this approach. It's really only been in the last 75 years, Pam, that we have really torn up the earth through our industrial agricultural practices. And so if we went back to, you know, prior to the beginning of using chemicals for agriculture and synthetic fertilizer, it would be back to when, you know, prior to that, where people were able to stay on the land and really regenerated it by being very holistic and not bringing in a lot of off-farm nutrients and imported goods.
Right.
The target outcomes that the state has listed, it's A through M, a whole list of targeted outcomes that include things like building soil organic matter and biodiversity, restoring and maintaining water resources, protecting spiritual and cultural traditions, enhancing human health and rural communities, fostering wildlife and animal welfare. We even got a section in there about creating livelihoods and durable solutions for the healthy food and agricultural workforce. That's an often overlooked part, that the humans are just as important in the regenerative agricultural system as the soil and as the animals who are in those systems.
Well, it's good to know. Oh, I'm sorry. It's good to know that a lot of thought was put into this definition. We're not going to go all the way through M, as you just in the
definitely not.
Our audience. This is one state within the United States, and we do have the whole world, but it's exciting to know that, you know, people are seeking to detail out what regenerative means. Now, you also have organic in the title of your organization. So the organic piece of regenerative is very important to what your organization is looking for.
It's so true. And we did manage to keep that in the California definition as that it would practice selection would include organic and traditional ecological knowledge, because that is a really important aspect when you look at organic principles and the use of biological kind of any kind of biological input,
Right.
that is not going to damage the water. It's not going to hurt the workers. It's not going to cause air pollution or just detract from the quality of the surroundings, the soil. It's proven that synthetic fertilizers destroy the soil microbiome. Roundup and any pesticide in its very name is a side. It is meant to kill things. And so it's fundamentally oppositional to regenerating and bringing life into something, would be to kill the life in something, right? And so if you just think of it that way, like trying to avoid the use of really pervasive and persistent chemicals and pesticides would be important for this whole concept of regenerating the planet, the soil, the communities.
Yeah, exciting. I'm glad that you were able to, I'm glad you're on the working group. So you got to have your input and discussion around some of that. You also mentioned the microbiome, because I think that soil health, that one pillar that you have out of your
Yeah.
three, I mean, that's so important too. And there's a lot of different approaches and different thoughts
Yeah.
about what soil health means. So if you'd like to share a little bit about that.
Pam, you're totally onto something there. Like I'd say soil health or healthy soil is also having its day in the sun. And there are a lot of different interpretations of what is soil health, what is healthy soil. So, I think at the end of the day, what you come down to is you build soil organic matter and you build the biodiversity in the soil by building soil organic matter. So that's a fundamental concept there that should underlie anything you're doing. And there's a lot of agreed upon practices, I'd say 5, of building healthy soil. And it starts with keeping the soil covered, like putting a protective armor over the soil. Don't till it. Don't use heavy tillage, because that destroys the soil microbiome and it opens up the soil to the air. And then all of the soil microbiome is going to obviously not last for very long. It's going to get dried out and hot. To diversify your crops, to have a really proactive crop rotation, and then to try and integrate animals whenever possible, because animals bring all kinds of benefits. They're depositing manure as they graze. There's an interaction between the saliva of a ruminant and the soil microbiome that is proven. Scientific studies that show that there is like some activation of the soil microbiome through that exchange. So I think there's a lot of mysteries of life that we don't fully understand and we can't capture in a scientific paper, but you can see it. You can see it with your eyes. If you go and look, go see, do you know Will Harris from White Oak Pastures down in Georgia?
I don't, but I'll have to look him up.
You will really enjoy him. I would think you definitely look him up. He's he's just an articulate and poetic kind of a spokesperson of this movement, regenerative cowboy, if you will. And you should check him out. He does a lot of different multi-species grazing and very beautifully articulates what is happening when you regenerate the soil by integrating animals. There are many other farmers I'd love to name, but I just think Will jumps to mind as a top one. And I think your listeners might really enjoy. Yeah.
Well, okay. Elizabeth, you talked about the ROC standard, and what are the goals of that standard?
Thanks for asking. That's a great question. The goals of our standard are ultimately to promote healthy agricultural practices through an all-encompassing certification that increases soil organic matter over time. And this has been proven to sequester atmospheric carbon into the soil. And it's why I think regenerative has become such a hot topic, is that potential to be a big carbon sink. But our standard also wants to ensure ethical and humane treatment of animals, and to emphasize pasture-based systems, and to provide fair conditions for all the farmers, the ranchers, and the workers, and really to build a highly valued supply chain for regenerative organic products to support farmers' stewardship of their land.
Yeah.
Anybody who is out there shopping can think of this ROC kind of as the new good housekeeping seal of approval for the planet.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. New housekeeping seal of approval. I love it,
Yeah.
because everybody's familiar with what that is, I think.
Right? The housekeeping seal of approval for the planet, I think, is key.
Well, we covered so much about just agriculture, your organization's role in it, definitions of regenerative agriculture that, again, is becoming more and more of a conversation topic, at least in the circles that I run in. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's exciting to know that things are moving forward and that, some standards are being developed for that so that we have some goals to shoot for. Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience before we go, Elizabeth?
Well, I mentioned this to you earlier. I think it might be really timely to share this information with your audience because I've been with the organization for 6 years. I've built this foundation. We have grown so much, but we are slightly limited by the fact that I am not a fundraiser. I haven't ever built something so huge that it would take over the world. And what we need is a CEO, a new CEO to step in. And I'm going to stay here and work alongside them. I'm going to join the ROA board, but we're going to start a search for a new CEO who has a proven track record, can really build and scale something and help us take this to the next level. Because the thing is, what we learn when farmers adopt these methods is they do better. Not only do they have more fun, and I hear that across the board, farmers who do regenerative, practice regenerative, have way more fun. They're out in nature, they're observing things happening on their farm. Their farms are more resilient and their profitability goes up, their morale goes up, and they're finding more and more markets for their products. So the food is better, healthier soil equals healthier food equals healthier people. That was a really fundamental concept from the Rodales. And I see it happening all the time. If you build it, they will come. And it happens with you add biodiversity, you start planting flowering plants, and suddenly all the birds and the bees show up. And those pollinators bring a lot of joy, but they also bring a lot of efficacy and function to your farm and help you not need to rely on pesticides and outside inputs. Mm-hmm. So the more resilience you have, the stronger and more healthy your farm will be.
Great. Well, I'm excited for you to announce that here on our show because we have a lot of people that are in the food industry that follow us. And so if any of you out there, the show notes contain all the links. Please reach out to the Regenerative Organic Alliance. And Elizabeth, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Pam. This was really fun. And I look forward to listening in on more of your podcasts going forward.
And for our other audience members, please send us a comment. Let us know what you think about the topic on this particular episode, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until then, I'm Pam Line-Miller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.